I didn't even cry. Not when I gave birth alone. Not when the pain clawed through my body like fire. Not even when the nurse looked at me with quiet pity and asked, "Is anyone coming to pick you up?" Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I was 20 years old, lying in a cold hospital bed, my son in my arms, and silence in my phone. The one person I had hoped would show up, my own mother, was the same person who slammed the door in my face. "You've humiliated us," she'd screamed at me weeks earlier when I came home pregnant. She didn't even let me get past the porch. "You've destroyed your father's name. You've disgraced this family." Then she turned her back and locked the door behind her like I was filth. I remember standing there in the rain, hands on my belly, numb from head to toe. That was the last time I looked back at that house. I gave birth with no one beside me. No mother's hand to hold. No soft voice telling me it would be okay. Just me and my son, and the quiet strength I didn't even know I had until that night. The moment they laid him on my chest, something inside me shifted. I wasn't broken. I wasn't ashamed. I was his mother. And from that second on, I promised myself that I would never let him feel what I felt. Never. So I gathered what little I had, bundled my newborn son in a blanket that smelled like industrial detergent, and stepped out of that hospital with no plan, no money, and no one waiting for me. But I walked out with purpose. Because sometimes, when everyone turns their back on you, that's when you start becoming something more. I stayed in a tiny room above a laundromat that first year. The air smelled like bleach, and the floor creaked with every step. I worked nights cleaning offices. I took online classes during the day, while Mason slept in a second-hand crib beside me. Some nights, when he cried and I was so tired I could barely lift my head, I used to whisper to him, "You're not a mistake. You're my miracle." And I meant it. I missed meals so he could eat. I wore the same shoes for 4 years straight. I studied hard, worked harder. Every door that slammed in my face fueled something inside me I didn't even have words for yet. I didn't date, didn't party. I was a ghost to the world. But I was building something real, slowly, painfully, but with fire. By the time Mason turned 10, I'd gotten my business degree and launched a small virtual assistant company. I started with 1 client, then 2, then 5. I was making more money than I ever imagined back in that freezing laundromat room. I remember the first time Mason and I moved into an apartment with real heating. He looked around the empty living room, eyes wide, and said, "This is all ours?" I smiled, tears in my eyes. Every bit of it. We bought a couch, a table, curtains. It wasn't much, but it was home. I didn't meet Derek the way you'd expect someone like me to meet someone like him. It was messy, stupid, and ironically, at a gas station. I was late for a client meeting. Mason had thrown up on my shirt that morning, and I was wearing a black blazer over a hoodie. I was juggling a coffee, a laptop bag, and a grocery bag when someone stepped back without looking and bumped right into me, spilling everything. "Oh my God," I started, flustered. But the man turned, and before I could unload my usual New York sarcasm, he looked at me and smiled. "I'm so sorry. That one's on me." He helped me gather my things. Then he held the door open. Then he offered to buy me a new coffee. I almost said no, but I was tired. And something about his face, kind eyes, steady voice made me pause. "All right," I said. "Just coffee." One coffee turned into a conversation. That conversation turned into a lunch. Lunch turned into dinner 2 weeks later. And that dinner, that's when I learned who he really was. Not just Derek, but Derek Sullivan. The Derek Sullivan, the tech billionaire, CEO of Sullivan Innovations. The man behind half the startups in Manhattan. I didn't believe it at first. I thought I was being punked, but it was real. And the crazy part? He didn't care that I was a single mom. He didn't care that I didn't come from money or that I didn't have a last name that meant something. He just saw me. And for the first time since Mason was born, I let someone in. We married quietly. Mason was my best man. Derek didn't want cameras or magazine covers. He just wanted us. By year 3, I had my own company running independently, a consulting firm rising fast, and a seat on 2 boards that used to laugh when I pitched ideas as a broken turn. I never reached out to my mother. Not once. But when I saw her that day, 15 years after she turned her back on me, I didn't need revenge. I just needed peace. She showed up outside our penthouse building looking like a shadow of the woman I remembered. Her hair was thinner, her skin dull, but her eyes still carried that familiar blend of pride and judgment. Until they didn't. Until she saw Derek step out of the car, hand in mine. And then her mouth dropped. "That's him," she stammered. "That's Derek Sullivan." I nodded.
Calmly.
"My husband." Her knees buckled. She collapsed right there on the sidewalk. And I didn't move. Because I remembered standing outside that house at 29 months pregnant, hearing that door slam. She left me in the rain with nothing. I left her on the pavement with everything she'd lost. She came back 2 days later. I was on the balcony with Mason, watering the plants, when the doorman called. Said there was a woman downstairs asking for me. Said she looked shaken, desperate, and refused to leave. I knew who it was before he even finished. I told him to let her up. Mason looked at me curiously. "Who is it?" "No one important," I said. "But someone I need to face." When she walked in, she hesitated in the doorway. Her eyes scanned the apartment slowly. The marble floors, the tall windows, the art on the walls. Her gaze finally landed on me. She looked like she didn't recognize me. I didn't blame her. I wasn't the scared girl from that night anymore. "I'm sorry to show up like this," she said quietly. But I didn't know what else to do. I said nothing. She looked down, twisting the straps of her worn-out purse. "After your father passed, I lost everything. Medical bills, loans, the house. I have nothing left." Still, I stayed quiet. She looked up, eyes already glassy. "I've been sleeping on a friend's couch. I haven't eaten properly in days. And when I saw you the other day, I fainted because I realized I turned away the only person who would have stood by me." "Don't make this sound noble," I said finally, voice calm. "You didn't just turn me away. You made sure I had nowhere else to go." Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was scared. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to handle you being pregnant. "You didn't even try," I replied. I begged. I cried. "You slammed the door anyway." She nodded, wiping her face with shaking hands. "You're right. I can't undo what I did. But I'm still your mother." That word felt heavy. She took a step forward.
"Please.
"Just a little help. I'll disappear after that. I swear." I went to my desk, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to her. She opened it, hands trembling. It was a check. Enough to settle debts, get an apartment, eat for months. Her eyes widened. This is too much." "It's not," I said. "It's what I owe myself, not you." She tried to hug me. I stepped back. "This doesn't mean we're okay," I told her. "It doesn't mean I forgive you. It just means I'm no longer the girl you left behind." She looked at me, eyes filled with something between regret and shame. "Can I meet Mason?" she asked. "No," I said flatly. "He doesn't need to know what abandonment feels like." She bit her lip, nodded slowly, and left without another word. I stood at the door long after it closed. Not because I was sad, but because I felt free. That night, I sat at the edge of Mason's bed, watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell in rhythm, one arm thrown over his forehead, a slight snore escaping his lips. He was 15 but still my little boy. He had no idea his grandmother had been in our home just hours earlier.
And he didn't need to.
He didn't need to know the version of me who stood on a porch at 20, crying and begging to be let in. He only knew this version, strong, calm, steady. The woman who never let him see her break. I brushed his hair back and whispered, "You saved me, kid." Because he had. A week passed. I thought maybe that was the end of it. But then she showed up again. This time at my office. I was in a meeting when my assistant slipped me a note. There's a woman here. Won't leave. Says it's family. I stepped out and saw her in the waiting area, wearing the same cardigan, eyes wide and anxious. I told you not to come here, I said, voice low and firm. I know. I'm sorry. She stood quickly, fumbling with something in her bag. I wanted to give you this. She pulled out an old photograph. Me, at 8 years old, sitting on my dad's lap. My mother behind us, smiling stiffly. I kept it, she said. All these years. I didn't take it. Why are you really here? I asked. I just want to see you again, she whispered. You, Mason. I want to fix things. There's nothing to fix, I said. You made sure of that. Her eyes darted around the office. You have everything now. You don't need to be angry anymore. And that's when I understood. She didn't come because she regretted what she'd done. She came because I'd made it without her. Because I had what she didn't. And it stung. I'm not angry, I said. I'm indifferent. That's worse. You're nothing to me now. I turned to walk away. Please, she called out. I'm your mother. I stopped. Not because of her voice, but because for a split second, I felt that old ache creep back in. The one that used to beg for love. But it didn't last long. I looked back at her and said, No, you were. Then I walked away. Derek noticed the change in me that evening. We were in the kitchen, prepping dinner, when he asked, She came back again, didn't she? I nodded. He set the knife down gently. You okay? I didn't yell, I said. I didn't cry. I just told her the truth. He reached over and touched my hand. You don't need to explain. You don't owe her anything. I swallowed hard. It's weird. I thought I'd feel something, satisfaction, closure. But I just don't care anymore. That's growth, he said. That's you becoming someone she can't reach. I looked at him. This man who had never once made me feel less than, who loved Mason like his own, who never saw my past as baggage. I knew in that moment I had everything I ever needed, not because of money, not because of the title on my office door, but because I had a home, a real one. I never told Mason the full story. I just told him that some people in life are meant to be lessons, not family. And he understood more than I expected. She missed out, he said one night while we sat on the balcony. You're the best person I know. That one sentence healed more than any apology ever could. The final time she showed up, it wasn't in person. It was a letter. No return address. Just my name, written in shaky cursive. I opened it slowly. It was only one page. Inside, she wrote that she was moving to a different state to stay with a distant cousin. Said she understood now that I didn't want her in my life, and that she wouldn't try again. At the end, she wrote, I hope someday you find it in your heart to forgive me. Not for me, but for yourself. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not because I forgave her, but because I needed to stop carrying her choices with me. Her shame was never mine. Her rejection wasn't a reflection of my worth. I made a life without her. And I made sure my son would never know the weight of begging for love. Mason's high school graduation came on a warm June morning. He wore his cap crooked and his tie loose, nervous energy buzzing through him as we walked into the stadium. Derek sat beside me, his arm draped gently over the back of my chair, the sun catching on his wedding ring. I watched my son walk across the stage and take his diploma with a proud, confident smile. And I realized this was it. This was the moment I'd been chasing all my life. Not money, not status, not revenge, but this. Watching my son become everything I never got to be when I was 20, safe, loved, unafraid. People came up to us afterward, shaking Mason's hand, complimenting me. One woman asked what I did for work, and I told her. She blinked and said, Oh, you're Ava Reed. I've heard your name everywhere. I smiled. That's me. We took pictures. We laughed. Mason shoved cake in my face later at dinner, and I didn't even mind. I didn't think about my mother. Not once. Until we got home. There was a message on the landline. One I'd forgotten we even had. It was her voice. I heard Mason graduated, she said. I wasn't there, I know I shouldn't have called. I just wanted to say congratulations. That's all. He must be amazing. You did good. She paused for a moment, then hung up. I deleted the message. I didn't need it, because in the end, she had no idea how amazing he truly was, or how much we had built from nothing, or how powerful silence can be when it's chosen, not forced. I sat on the edge of Mason's bed again that night, just like I did when he was a baby. You proud of me? He asked, looking up at the ceiling. I smiled. Every second. He turned to me. Are you happy now? I thought for a long time before I answered. I think I've always been happy, I said. I just had to fight for it. He didn't say anything else. He just reached out and held my hand until he fell asleep. And that's how the story ends. Not with doors slamming, not with tears, but with peace.